So let's go ahead and let's get into Narja's new trailer. Dang, this looks crispy. I like how demented this is already starting to feel with this character. She looks experimented on. That's crazy. Oh, I like that. I could protect someone, right? Oh, that's kind of a fire line. Oh, that's fire. That look insane. Nah, her animations are crazy. Controller instinct. Oh, so she's gonna be on some support. Okay. Wow. Okay, so that's insane. I'm not gonna lie, chat. This ult right here, like that transition is crazy. That boom. Wow. Like what? Oh my god, they cooked with her. Yeah, they went crazy. I mean, to be fair, I feel like with Narja coming into the game, another instinct unit is kind of interesting, but I will say, I think that this is also kind of setting us up for more content with certain types of units for like attribute exclusive play styles. And like, we're probably going to get more content that leans into that. I think that that's what a lot of this is going to end up building into. I feel like they are going to avoid anything that's passion because of Malin right now. And there's a lot of people that actually think Malin got nerfed. No, she didn't get nerfed. They actually just made the mechanics of the newest Great Rift or the latest Great Rift that we had, like after you do X amount of hits, you don't get any of that extra, right, that you were normally getting from Malin, like in the very first one. So that's really what it was so that you could use characters like Serenio, and it was just kind of more so really allowing her to be the limelight of that Great Rift. So yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for this. I think that this is going to be great for the game just because we need more supports. Kind of interested though with like all the speculated like, you know, potential adjustments, buffs, or Leah being one of those units that may be seeing something like, and we have this character like Narja. I almost feel like she's going to be leaning a little bit more towards the debuff side. But we do have a few days before we actually can know for sure, right? So with all of that being said, I figured what better time other than now to overview and give my final thoughts on season 1, because we're literally days away from it ending. And I want to make sure that I have this documented just in case we need to come back and look at certain things, right? Now, of course, with that being said, if we go into my account, we got about 12 level 60s done. I've been streaming a lot of this progression on twitch.tv/ZoxTalks, guys. Make sure you guys come through. I'm also going to be a part of a competition that is going to be taking place on Sunday. So if you guys want to see the grind leading up to that, and then of course my like attempt, definitely make sure you guys come through. It is going to be fun nonetheless. But with that, all in all, with season 1, just even comparing this to like the preseason and like that shift into season 1, it's been a lot of changes, man. I would say like if we're even just starting out with like save data has changed so much for me. Like obviously we understand a lot more. I think the localization has definitely gotten better. Still needs work, but it's gotten better. But like even like one of the things I was laughing at, I was looking at it a little bit earlier, but I was like, dude, like I was building builds with like monster cards. That's like one thing I really am hoping though, after like just kind of reflecting and looking at season 1 as a whole, like I'm hoping that monster cards actually do become a little bit cheaper or more affordable to really throw into builds, because as of right now, they just seem like they're this enticing thing that sits there. We can't really touch them. And I think that that's something that kind of sucks right now. It's like, man, there's so many different builds I want to do. There's so many different things I want to try to see. And it doesn't really make sense, because even just going for 2 of these is 160, you know, faint memory. That's a lot, right? So that's something that is like, ugh, right? But I will say, right, other than that, the builds have definitely gotten tremendously better. We understand a lot more. Obviously, layers of RNG. I can't wait for this system to allow us to be able to edit our save data. Like that is going to be tremendous. And it's going to really help us out significantly, I feel like, especially with a lot of pre-existing and even maybe new save data that we may make. But I will say also on top of that, I can't not talk about potential farming in the season one. It definitely got better because we got more shops, but it doesn't change how egregious this farm could be, especially if you're trying to like give full value to your character. Now, I think it's just like, again, it's quantity to like the ratio at which you can farm it. Like I mentioned before in previous videos, I think simply put, like if just being able to farm it was more consistent, maybe if we had the 2x event a little bit longer, other than like the one time we've had it this whole season, that definitely probably could have averaged out the accumulated amount of resources people would have had. I think there's a lot of different things that maybe they could do more of that would really help in season 2. And I also think like if there's more content and more ways for us to be able to achieve this stuff, I think that could also help out. So it's a lot of just kind of like unknown, and we just kind of have to see. They did mention obviously QOL stuff and like kind of test rewards with other things, but I will say that definitely does not change like how intense this grind can be, how stamina heavy it is. But I've also seen on the other side, like some people argue, which is valid, that you only have to do the grind one time. Like once you finish it for your character, you're done. You don't ever have to worry about the potential farm again for that specific character, which is fair, right? But you got to do it for so many for so many other characters. It's like, dang, right? But I guess they have to keep us playing somehow. But again, it does go into the other aspect, which is time, right? And I think that the amount of time I spent farming this season, I didn't personally mind it, but I think that this is something that they are going to have to really heavily consider as we shift into season 2. Chaos Lab Zero was very time consuming. And I'm saying this as a person that was putting in on average anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day. With some days where I may not have been on my computer. I may have just been doing it on my phone, but dude, like the grind, the resetting, the RNG of getting like the copy events and all of that jazz, it is definitely a huge grind. And I think that if this game wants to be successful as we push into this next season, if they want to, not only like, I don't think they're going to struggle getting new players, but I think it's going to be the retaining new players, because you don't want players to come into this like scene where the grind is so heavy. It's just intimidating for them to really be able to jump in and keep up with the game. You want them to feel like they can really jump into the game and have fun, right? And then of course, if there are aspects that you need to grind, then it's like, okay, cool. So offer it. The skip button just needs to be a straight skip, or it needs to be automatically turned on. I think that, like, again, when we get the editing for the save data, and then also the ability to be able to have the characters like level up to test them or trial them, and like, it's like kind of like that sync system, so that we can have like just the ability to test things out before we decide if we want to even invest in them. I think that is going to be tremendously necessary in order for this game to be successful and to do well going into this next season. I will say also too, epiphany procs and just chances of getting things definitely need to feel a lot more rewarding at the higher end. I feel like if you're going up and you're fighting level 130s, or you're really trying to do more rewarding stuff, harder stuff, it should feel or be more rewarding. There's really no big difference than going from like 8 to, 8 to 13, 11. Really at that point, you just continue to farm level 8. Like there were some guys, JP, that actually had farmed, I think it was like 113 on like runs on Lab Zero difficulty 8, and then 113 on difficulty 11, and there really wasn't any difference other than it was just way harder to do Lab Zero 130, right, on difficulty 11. And I feel like because of those inconsistencies, like one thing that I think like absolutely bugs me is when my cards don't epiphany and I can get all the way to the end and they don't epiphany. I'm hoping that does change. I don't know, like haven't really heard that being mentioned. Like we've had more talks about divine epiphanies, but I would really love to see that change, because I think that to me is a time killer, because if I spend X amount of time, which on average is anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour per run for some people, and then I get to the very end and none of my cards epiphany, but I got the copies or whatever it may have been, That sucks. And with the editing, it doesn't mention it's going to be more than one like thing you can change. I think if anything, I think they did kind of mention it was going to be like one thing you can go in and change. So if you got like, for me, I've had some builds where it was like 6 cards that were just not even developed. I was just like, man, like that sucks. That is something that is intimidating and will kind of deter, or, kind of make people not want to play the game, right? So I'm really hoping that changes. Great Rift is another thing, right? I think with Great Rift, I'm all for competitive content, leaderboard content, but I think some of it, like just like even the chasing of it, for me personally, just wasn't nearly as worth as I would have liked it to have been. I felt like this felt a little bit more like a chore than it was like just something really fun, but I also want to still compete against people to do. Because even down to like, some of the higher rankings and people trying to chase number one, like if you're trying to be one of these guys up here, the runs and like what you would have to do is insane, right? And this, of course, is leading into obviously like the conversation about Cassius. The reason why I mean, we all kind of know at this point he's probably going to get the touch of grace here, where they're going to probably adjust them, right? I don't know how bad or how significant it's going to be, but there are going to obviously be some things that either change about him. Obviously, we talked about Tressa and stuff like that. But I think in this season, they definitely got to reign supreme. I don't know if that by design, that's what the developers actually wanted. So I think it is going to be interesting to see that shift. I think it is going to be very, very interesting. I think one of the things that you want to kind of keep open, I think, yes, you want players to have to like maybe even giving that current character a little bit more shine, but I don't think you want it to feel like you have to use those characters in certain things. And I think that that's what the Great Rift kind of felt like to me, was like, you have no choice but to use these characters. Otherwise, you can't really do it that well. Now, granted, I would say the second Rift was definitely a little bit more accessible, whereas like the first one was definitely locked down to you have to have these specific characters. So I'm really hoping that with the Great Rift, they just really honestly consider the accessibility, the openness of the game, and don't exclude that aspect from this content, because I think that that's what makes the game like extraordinary. It makes it unique, and I think it's ultimately what makes it fun. It's going to allow people like at any phase to be able to jump into it and not feeling like they have to have certain things or certain units to really be able to get away with doing it, or certain amounts of time. Because like even the guys that are like chasing number one, like doing like 12-hour runs, insane to me. But hey, it is what it is. That's just that, right? Now, moving forward, I feel like, outside of that, right? Nebula distortion, amazing. I actually really like this aspect of Lab Zero the most, just because it was like, you could really honestly go in here and do this with anything as long as you understood what you were up against. And this to me was just a really nice, like kind of check-in from each update to see how well your account was performing, what you may have needed to adjust to deal with certain gimmicks or bosses, and then to add the extra layers of like, damage reductions and stuff like that, so that you could really try to stretch out your strategies and stuff like that. This felt like great content to me. And even just down to like the rewards and stuff that we got for it, they seem pretty reasonable. But I definitely really enjoyed doing the Nebula distortion. It was really fun content in my opinion to do. But let me know how you guys felt about Nebula distortion versus the Great Rift. Like, which one have you felt like you've had more fun doing? Or if there are any changes that you would actually like to see to the Nebula distortion if they ever decide to do something like that again. Now, outside of that, I think the shops, in my opinion, seem pretty solid. I think one thing I would like to maybe see, because one thing I think that was like kind of interesting was like the way that we're able to purchase things out of the shops. I feel like maybe some of the stuff might need a slight cost reduction so that it's a little bit more manageable. Because I also noticed too, like depending on how much time you are grinding, not everybody had nearly as much currency as the other. And I mean, I was playing a lot and I still felt like, I was constantly rubber banding and like trying to do, different, Lab Zero maps, trying to clear out all the shops. And I know for a fact, like if you didn't have a lot of time, you probably are still sitting on a lot of stuff in the shop. And I think that that's one of the rushes right now, like people trying to finish up and get things. Obviously, the biggest thing to me, like, was obviously the alignment material for the multi-dimensional stuff, the anchors, if you were going for that, the ego crystal, and then of course like the condemnation shards, and then in the second shop it was the what is it called? Where is it at? It's the Omega code. There we go. So I felt like that was obviously like the most important thing, but I really feel like for those of us, like including myself, that was able to really flesh out a lot of this stuff, it was because of how much extensive time we were putting in and how much currency we were able to actually accumulate on average. And like I was saying before, the metric for time, I think it is fair. Like, yeah, you do have to play the game, but I think the metric it was asking for, it felt like the metric felt a little bit more like open world games. And that's even like kind of like one of those things where I kind of like expect that from an open world game because it's an open world game. This again does obviously it's a roguelike. So yeah, you can time sync in it to some degree. But I think that for general like content, like your events and stuff like that, that should be a little bit more casual, accessible. At least when we're talking about like shops and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that needs to be the case always when it comes down to how you are able to build like the super OP builds and stuff like that. But I think being able to to realistically clear out shops is always a really, really good metric and a good sign of faith to the people playing your game. Because at least at that point, if people don't obviously have all the currency in the world, they know if they're at least participating, they should be able to do well with the shops and stuff like that. So that's just kind of my take on that. But other than that, I felt the shop stuff was pretty solid. It was really, really good. Now, the last thing that I want to kind of talk about here is, again, just the zero system versus lab zero with this season. I know that was definitely like this really big thing just because of where we were at in terms of like efficiency of building builds versus like cost and stuff like that. I really would like to see with the however they decide to add the lab zero to the zero system. I'm hoping that it doesn't just become this thing that you got to roll and you got to try to get the lab zero to pop up. I'm hoping it just stays its own thing. That would actually be really nice. I don't know how they actually are going to do that. They never really actually mentioned that either. So that's another thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's going to look, because it may just become a chaos manifestation that's just added in here that we just can go to, and then we re-roll it for the zero system. Now, the only thing I would say is if they do decide to do that, I 1,000% think that they're going to have to adjust how much this costs, how you're able to go about doing this, for sure, which they have mentioned it. But I will say that this definitely was something I feel like more players wanted to explore, but the cost fallacy of it wasn't really that great for people to really be able to do it, unless again they had a ton of time to just run maps to keep increasing the levels and the potential chance of getting a better codex, which not everybody had that time. And again, I'm speaking from a place where I had the time, but I also understand a lot of the player base is casual and not everybody has that allotted time. And I just think the more accessible you can make your game and just playable, the longer people are going to stick around and play it. There are a lot of great games that are coming out this year, and I really want to see CZN do extremely well as we push into this next arc that we're going into. We got Arc Knight Infields, we got NTE, we got Silver Palace, we got Seven Deadly Sin Origins. We got so many games that are coming, and I really, really want to see this game do well. So I don't know, guys. I feel like overall, if I had to rate this season, I would give this season, for me personally, a 7 out of 10. I don't think it was anywhere near perfect, but I don't think it was that terrible either. Definitely some nuances that needed to be fixed, but I can't knock the devs for being as rewarding and really making sure that they hooked us up when we were having a lot of these troubles, the rebates and the refunds and all the stuff that they did, the stamina, the currency. They really, really did do a good job despite the controversy, all of the different things that they had going on. I felt like the devs had an amazing season one, trying to get the game where it needs to be. But other than that, I'm interested in knowing how you guys feel. This is my overall spill on season one. We'll probably talk about this a little bit more on the podcast. I know a lot of you guys have been asking about the podcast. The next podcast episode, everybody, like I said, is kind of coming back, from the, holidays and stuff like that. It's still very, very early in the year. We're only the 9th day in the month. So, just give us a little bit of time. I appreciate you guys' hype and patience, but we will be getting getting the podcast rolling back as soon as everybody is accessible and ready to go. But other than that, guys, that's going to be that with this one. Everyone, stay blessed. Come through twitch.tv/ZoxTalks. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to this channel as well. And I hope to see you guys on the live stream day. All right, guys. See ya.